What's up, people? Um, this might be a little longer than I like to make my videos here recently, and I apologize in advance. If you don't like long videos, you may not want to watch this one, but I hope you do. Um, Emotion and perception are very important. With us as XJWs, and I mean in general, in life in general, there's a lot of people who are in prison right now and will never get out because they got caught up in emotion or perception or both. I was reading a news story online, a few days ago. There was a guy who got murdered. His brother heard through the streets that a particular name did the murder. He went and murdered that person. He seen him, walking down the street. He ran up and murdered him. Come to find out, it was someone with a similar name, and that person had nothing to do with the murder of that man's brother. So now he's going to prison for the rest of his life. Emotion and perception. I own businesses. A quick example of where that can really get messed up is I'll send people out, like crews out to do different jobs, on locations, commercial and residential locations. I sent 3 people out to one particular job. I sent a supervisor and then 2 workers who were going to help the supervisor do the job. The supervisor happened to be black. The 2 other guys were Latino guys. So the supervisor was in the back of the house. The 2 other guys were in the front. One of them's carrying up, some stuff, to carrying up the walkway, and he screams, at the top of his lungs. The supervisor comes running around to the front of the house, says, "What's wrong with you, man? We need to be professional. Why are you screaming? You can't do that. What's wrong?" And he said, "El gato negro." Now, let me kind of position this situation a little bit. This was October. It was around Halloween. People put up decorations, and he told him El Gato Negro is why he screamed. The supervisor said, "Go home. You can't use those words. Go home." And I always tell all my people, don't just fire someone. If you intend on getting rid of someone, send them home. And then we need to come and we need to sit down and talk, me and, whoever their supervisor is, and probably get HR involved. And we need to decide what's going on. Ultimately, the decision is going to be mine. But, we need to figure out what's going on because emotion and perception can make things off, even for supervisors. So he sent them home. Supervisor called me up. "Hey, man, we got to fire this guy." I said, "Well, we need to fire him. Why? What happened?" He called me the N-word. And I said, "Come on, man, that doesn't make sense." Yeah, he called me the N-word, because I yelled at him. He must have thought I didn't know what it meant, but he called me the N-word. I said, "Okay, well, look, we're going to talk about it." I sent someone else out to help them do the job. We're going to talk about it. I want to talk to the employee. I want to, we'll sit down when you get back. We'll figure out what's going on. I get the employee in there who was accused of saying it, and I asked him what's going on. The other employee who he had been talking to, who had been in the front, had taken a picture of the front of the house afterwards, I guess, knowing that, hey, this is a big misunderstanding. He sent it to me and showed me the front of the house. And there was a black cat. It looked scary. It had the red eyes. It was by the walkway. But I asked the employee, "What happened, man?" And he said, "I was walking up. I saw the cat out the corner of my eye. I thought it was a real cat. It looked scary. I didn't expect it to be there. I yelled. And then the supervisor came running around and said, 'Why did you just yell?' And I told him the black cat. El Gato Negro." The supervisor thought he was called the N-word. Emotion and perception. It was all a big misunderstanding. So I paid the guy for the time he had missed, and talked to the supervisor and told him, "Hey, you usually get it right, but this time you were wrong, man. You saw that the wrong way." But we ended up moving past it. Now, they can laugh about it and joke about it and stuff. But if we just going off emotion and perception, that guy would have got fired that day for being scared by a Halloween decoration. Emotion and perception. So I say all that to say I was, having a good conversation with a person who is still physically in the organization. They reached out to me by email probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and we have conversations a lot because they're dealing with, some different things. They went through some things that I've talked about in videos before. And they actually liked the fact that, what kind of drew them to my videos was they said, a lot of channels they go to, they're getting they're getting told they have no sense, and how could they be so stupid to be a witness, and they kind of just feel negative. But they like my presentation, so hey, I appreciate that. But their perception in our conversation that we started having was about whether the organization can make a comeback from the situation, the slope that they seem to be on, where there is no coming back. In the information age, every day more and more people are becoming more aware of what's going on in the organization, and they're more and more aware of just what's going on in general, and know that things are false, know that things are fake. And they really can't hide from it anymore. They can't just keep putting out magazines. They're in Zoom meetings, not even at the hall right now. So their control of the propaganda is as loose as it's ever been, with what people can research on their own and with what controls they can actually have over people right now with the way things are because of the coronavirus. So his perception is he doesn't think it could ever come back, even though he's physically in still. He's really just doing it for, family purposes, which makes sense. I said in one of my videos, sometimes for some people it makes more sense to stay, just fake it, it's easier now than ever. You can just jump on a Zoom meeting and go back to living your regular life, but we were having a conversation about whether we thought there's anything at all just in the world of, fantasy situations that the organization could do to try to make a comeback. And so I think there is, because I think if you look at history, like I said, emotions and perceptions, all of this new light and all of this stuff has happened before. This isn't exclusive to witnesses. These false prophecies is not exclusive to Jehovah's Witnesses. Is the giving false dates for Armageddon and moving the dates around and having new light. None of that's new. Old people tell me all the time, nothing's new under the sun. None of that's new. That has happened for centuries. People just like to think because they're tied emotionally to the Jehovah's Witnesses, it's just us. It's just this organization. When really, Charles Taze Russell really just picked up the ball that was already in motion and ran with it. The game was already going. He just got put into the game, and he ran with it. So, if you look back at history, you can look at like the Lutheran Church. The Lutheran Church said that in 1590, they said that they said this in like 1540 or something, that by 1590 the gospel will be spread to the entire earth. Sound familiar? So they said that because of that would begin the last days once the gospel was spread to the entire earth. Then in 1635, Armageddon would start. And so from 1590 to 1635 was going to be the last days, because what was going to trigger it, like I said, sound familiar, was the word being spread to the entire earth. Same thing the Jehovah's Witnesses say now, And so 1635 was Armageddon was going to start. That was hundreds of years ago. Obviously, it didn't happen. They didn't retract that statement until like 1989, where they came out and said, hey, they quoted the scripture in Matthew about not knowing the time and hour, and said we shouldn't be guessing on the time and date. We don't know. When God feels fit, that it's time to do it, he's going to do it. But the Lutheran Church is still around. The Catholic Apostolic Church, they said that in like 1828, in the 1828, 1830, that they were in the last days then, and that millions of people that were alive would never have to face death. They didn't believe in the paradise earth, but they believed that since they were in the last days in this lifetime, they were going to be taken to heaven. They didn't give an exact date, but they said before these people die, but the generation that's alive right now, before you die, you're not going to die because you're going to be taken to heaven. Didn't happen. Again, that message sounds very familiar though. Some that is really close to home with Jehovah's Witnesses is the Presbyterian Church, because Russell, when he was young, his family was Presbyterian. So the Presbyterian Church had many different dates that they had given. They said that the end was coming. they said between 1650 and 1695. They didn't give an exact date, but they said within that 45-year span, Armageddon was definitely coming. Again, hundreds of years ago. It was definitely coming, 1650 to 1695. It didn't happen. So then another person, another leader of the church came along. I think his name was Love, and he gave a more detailed breakdown later. Like, so he said in 1758 that Armageddon was going to start. Babylon was going to fall in 1758. In like 1760, God's wrath would be shown to the wicked on earth, and then by 1780 or something, Armageddon would begin. Didn't happen. I mean, they gave exact dates, and inside of that, I'm just going off memory, but inside of that, they gave actual months in those years that things were going to happen. And those were hundreds of years before Russell was born, but he knew about those prophecies coming up as a Presbyterian. He eventually stopped being Presbyterian when he was a teenager and really started to veer more towards the Millerite movement, the Millerism, the Adventism. He started to move towards that movement. And in that movement, there had been in 1844 3 different exact dates that were given by that Millerite movement. April, I think, was the first one. That didn't come true. So then they moved to May, I think. That didn't come true. So then they moved to October, and that didn't come true. So that, prophecies in that religion, in that sect of the religion, that denomination was a very big thing. So none of that came true. But Charles Taze Russell, growing up, was very interested in that the Millerite movement, the Millerism movement, the Adventism movement, and so he started to study and learn from those preachers. James Wendell, I think, is what really got Russell interested in it, and then there were a couple other people. George Storrs and George Stetson or something like that, that he brought in and he wanted to learn a lot from. So this Jehovah's Witness organization really started there in the Millerite movement. And then Barber was the real big one that became involved with Russell. Russell was really just kind of his student. And it seemed to be learning from him. And he did a lot with prophecy. So he actually said, and what actually created this organization that we are all making videos about was Barber said that in 1878, the resurrected ones were going to return to earth. He gave an exact date. So the resurrected ones were going to return to earth. And Russell was there, with him. They had before the Zion's Watchtower, they were producing a paper called The Herald. I think it was called The Herald of the Morning or something. But they put in the paper that in 1878, millions of people were going to be resurrected. It was going to usher in the new world. There were even, people saying that they saw Russell on the 6th Street Bridge in Pittsburgh, dressed in all white, waiting for God to take him up on that date when it was supposed to happen. He was interviewed by people in the newspaper and stuff later, and he said, no, it wasn't true. He was in bed. But anyway, people said they saw him there. But 1878, the end is supposed to be here. The resurrection is supposed to be here. It doesn't happen, So in what is the first new light in this organization history, in this Jehovah's Witness organization history, Russell says, hey, man, we got to say something. Like it didn't happen. Now we've got to go into the Herald magazine and we've got to say something. We've got to explain something. We got to tell them we had it wrong, and we're going to look at some new dates and whatever. We got to say that our math was wrong. And Barber was mad. And Barber said, no, we're not going to do that. He was probably upset that he got the date wrong and he didn't want to backtrack. So they went into this Herald magazine and they both were creating editorial pieces month after month, basically going back and forth at each other about their beliefs, and they're supposed to be of the same same organization, but they started, counteracting each other with their editorial pieces, and that lasted for about a full year until like 1879, when finally the argument just came to a head and they went their separate ways. So Barber went his way, Russell, and he kept the Herald magazine, I believe. Russell went his own way and created Zion's Watchtower, and said, and like I said, in the first New Light, we had that date wrong. We misunderstood. We're going to recalculate. It's actually going to be 1914, and that's where that whole New Light, and we're going to recalculate. We're going to give new dates. All that came from, but that wasn't new. That was just new to this organization. That had happened several times in that Millerite organization, several times. And like I said, if you do the research on all these different religions and look up their Armageddon dates or Armageddon prophecy dates, it's not new. All these religions have had different dates throughout the years. It's just that the JWs Witnesses organization is fairly new when it comes to in relation to these other religions, and we are emotionally tied to it. So we're in our mind and our perception is that this is very new. They're the only ones who have done it. This is exclusive to Jehovah's Witnesses. It's not exclusive at all. We're not as special as we think. So that being said, and kind of why I went down that whole long-winded path is because, as I'm explaining these things to them and telling them that these different religions, these different denominations that have made these prophecies and been wrong, have been able to survive. Now, obviously, we're in a different day and age, information age. Everyone has their world. Everyone has a computer, a very powerful computer in their hands where they can look up anything, boom, like that. Everyone can find out anything they want to find out like that. You can find out false information as easily, though, like that. But in this day and age, obviously, there's different challenges that they would have to face in order to try to come back. So the first challenge is they'd have to understand they're not just going to be able to pull the wool over people's eyes. You can't just, not anymore. You can't just say, I'm going to tell you a lie and you just believe it. We're kind of getting to that point where too many people are looking too much and say, no, I'm not just going to believe it. I want to know what's going on. So what would they have to do? It would have to be drastic. Do I think they'd ever actually do it? No, but we're just talking fantasy. We're talking about, in theory, theoretically, what could happen. So I think, first of all, what they'd have to do is come out and say, shunning is wrong. We're done shunning. This organization will no longer shun. If you've been shunning someone, stop it immediately. Welcome back your family members. Welcome back your loved ones. Show them that we love them, that God is a God of love. We love them. Even though they may have been led astray, welcome them back into your heart. Stop shunning immediately. Just dead it. Get rid of it. Second thing is they'd have to say we are turning over all of our data and information on anyone involved in any sort of abuse to children or sexual abuse or to women or whatever abuse may have occurred. Any and all documents that we have, we are going to cooperate and turn these over to authorities. And we, will suspend those people from being a part of our congregations pending the outcome of those investigations because we found out these things are wrong. Obviously, there's going to be some monetary things involved there. And, of course, that would take place. But they would have to do that to really show that they were trying to be a different type of organization. The next thing they'd have to do is the entire governing body would have to be done. Again, I don't think they'd ever do these things. They have way too much pride and they're way too stubborn. But they'd have to say, look, we have our understanding of the scriptures has been wrong. And in our zeal to try to lead this organization down the right path, we have made some misjudgments and we've made some mistakes. And so therefore, we feel like it is best that new leadership come in and take this great organization of Jehovah's, is how they would position it, into the next phase of operation. And in doing so, we've got to admit that we were wrong about dates. We were wrong to give dates. We were wrong to create in our um, embarrassment. We tried to explain our misjudgments by making things more complicated with overlapping generations and all these different things. We were wrong. Just admit you're wrong. I think if they did that, if they did those different steps, a lot of people would leave, but a lot would stay. I think more would stay than if they just stay on the course right now that they're on of being stubborn and just hemorrhaging members every month, every year, because people are waking up and realizing it's nonsense. So they've got to, at some point, they've got to own up to the fact that it's nonsense. You see it happen in other businesses all the time, and that's what they are. The JWs Witnesses, the West China Bible and Tract Society is a business. It's a business. So you see it happen in any other business that's not religious, related, where a chairman makes some big errors or a board makes some bad decisions, and the president has to lose their job because of it. The president of the company or, the CEO of the company, they've got to step down. The chairman of the board, they need to step down. Something needs to happen major at the top. Someone's got to come out after that smoke clears and say, hey, we made some mistakes. There were some blunders. There were some errors, some misjudgments. We made some decisions we shouldn't have made. And now to take this company in the new direction, we have new leadership and a new view of where we need to be. So if they did that and maybe elected a board, of different individuals, maybe from around the country, around the world, different people, different races, ethnic backgrounds, to come in and be like a board to help lead a new organization, I think they could probably save themselves. It's a new age, it's an information age. It would take something drastic like that, some drastic announcement, some drastic changes to stop the inevitable, just slide into oblivion that this organization is on. I think even, I think there will still be like a few, there'll probably be, thousands of members still in the organization, even if it does get to that death date, because there's some people who are just going to be so stubborn and they're going to stick it out, and they're going to be told this narrow road is getting more narrow as we get closer to Armageddon, and you who are sticking it out are the true believers, and you'll be rewarded by Jehovah. So for some people, they'll be rewarded in their mind by sticking to that, even though we know it's nonsense. But the vast numbers of people, it just seems like, man, how can they? There's no way. The way things are going now, there's no way they can keep it up without some drastic change. I was watching just this morning the JT and Lady C XJW Critical Thinkers video. I love their channel, but they were talking about, and someone mentioned in my comments in another video this new, and I appreciate that, this new elders letter that went out that said they can be disfellowshipped if they're like questioning, or if they're saying negative things about the vaccine, and warning them that the governing body has decided, this is their view on it, and the elders need to basically shut up, So what JT mentioned was this might be like that last straw for a lot of elders, and I could see that. I could see them saying, man, now they're telling me, I just need to shut up, not even speak my view, even though it is kind of turning into a political view, but I could see this being a last straw. I agree with that. And if it is, there could be a mass exodus coming up of elders. And once elders start falling, it seemed like it would be a domino effect, for a lot of the just rank and file within the congregations to start falling. So I don't know. That was our conversation. This was kind of long-winded to get to that point, but this is what him and I were talking about. Is if we thought there was something that the organization could do to try to come back, to try to make a comeback, to try to reposition themselves. I still know the doctrine is nonsense, but in my personal view, all these different denominations, all these different religious doctrines are nonsense. You got to dig deeper than that. But that's my view. I realize some people need religion in their life. I get it. I don't need religion in my life at all. I do believe we have a creator, so I'm not atheist, but I don't need religion. But if they still want it to be a religion of some sort and keep some members, what do you think they could do? Leave a comment, send me an email. Again, I'm sorry it's kind of long-winded today. It was just, a lot on my mind, after our conversation that we had, and just wanted to see what other people thought. Y'all have a good day. Hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry it's long, and I'll talk to y'all soon.